What's up in the Senate this week?
Well, there is a lot of stuff going on. My mind is kind of focused on what's going on in the Budget Committee because I'm the ranking member there. And we've had two pretty interesting hearings so far, one with the director of the CBO and one with Sean Donovan, who is head of the Office of Management and Budget, the group that writes the budget, helps the president write his budget. So we've had some very good discussions. I think to me, when I look at the situation of the budget, it's absolutely imperative that we write a budget based on the reality of what's happening to ordinary people in America. And what's happening to ordinary people, I think most listeners know, is the middle class continues its 40-year decline. Real unemployment is not 5.8%, it's over 11%. Youth unemployment, 18%. African American youth unemployment, about 30%. For the family right in the middle of the economy, the median family, that family's inflation accounted for income has gone down by almost $5,000 since 1999. But what we are also seeing, and the numbers are just absolutely almost unbelievable, is a huge transfer of wealth from the middle class to the very, very wealthiest people in this country. What we have seen is that the nation's wealth going to the middle class has gone down from 36% to less than 23% from 1985 to 2013. And if the middle class had simply maintained the same share of the nation's wealth that it had 30 years ago, it would have more than $10 trillion in cumulative wealth. Can you believe that?
Wow. So that's
and
a
then
10
on
trillion.
the other hand,
I'm sorry.
on the other hand, while the middle class continues to shrink, what we have seen just since 2009 is that the top 1% has experienced an $11 trillion increase in its wealth. So what you're looking at is an economy in which middle class wealth shrinks incredibly, and people on top end up with $11 trillion more in wealth. And where we are right now in terms of distribution of wealth, Tom, is the top 0.1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. A study just came out very recently that in terms of income, since the Wall Street crash, over 99% of all of the new income generated goes to the top 1%, which means that economic growth doesn't mean anything because the people on top, it doesn't mean anything for the middle class because the people on top get it all. So that's where we are. And then you combine that with the fact that just last week, the Koch brothers reminded us that they intend to buy the next elections. They are prepared, along with a few of their friends, to spend some $900 million on the elections. And just stop and think for a second. If you had 2 million people, a lot of people, providing $100 in campaign contributions, that would be $200 million. That's about 20% of what one family is prepared to spend in the next election. And my guess is they're going to end up actually spending a lot more than that. So when you combine the distribution of wealth, the fact that the top 0.1% of 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 90%, when you look at income, 99% of all new income going to the top 1%, when you look at campaign spending, in which one family is going to spend close to $1 billion, the second wealthiest family in this country, an extreme right-wing family whose agenda includes ending Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the EPA, giving more tax breaks to the rich, and they're about to buy elections. We have to take a very deep breath and try to figure out where we are as a nation. We are certainly nowhere near being a vigorous democracy. We are moving more and more, in my view, toward an oligarchic form of society. And how do you turn it around? Can we turn it around? There was another story that came out that I thought was very interesting. You and I, Tom, for years have talked about our disastrous trade policies how NAFTA and CAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China have cost us millions of decent paying jobs. Well, the largest trade agreement in history is called the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is coming down the pike pretty soon. There was a study done by a group called Media Matters looking at how much coverage the TPP has received on network news. And you know how much coverage it's received, Tom?
Yeah, with the exception of the Ed Show on MSNBC, it's been zero, basically.
That's right. Virtually nothing. So here you have a huge trade agreement, which in my view will have a horrendous impact on jobs and income in the United States, on prescription drug prices all over the world, on issues of sovereignty, and the networks have decided to provide zero coverage to it. So you got all of these issues out there. You got a media, corporately owned media, which does not cover issues of importance to working families. You got a handful of families owning the political process, and you got a massive transfer of wealth from the middle class to the upper income, to the top 1%. How do you turn that around? Well, anyone who tells you it's easy won't be telling you the truth. But several facts are pretty clear. If we continue to have elections where 63% of the people don't vote, as was the case in the last midterm election, you surely are not going to turn it about. If you have a situation where 63% of the people, as a poll indicated a year ago, don't know which party controls the House or the Senate, or don't know much about the budget, we're not going to turn it around. So what our job has got to be is to, what I often say is create a political revolution in this country, which means change political consciousness so that ordinary people understand, maybe as much as the Koch brothers, how important the political process is. When you hear people out there saying, oh, politics is all crap, all the politicians are liars and thieves and everything else, I'm not going to vote. Ask yourself why the second wealthiest family in this country is going to spend close to $1 billion on campaigns. They're not fools. They understand that who controls Congress is pretty important. They think it's important. Working people should also think it's important. And then what we need to do is not only change consciousness so that people are involved in running for office in the political process. We have got to have a progressive agenda. Well, what do we do? What do we want? Where do we want to go? And I think we have to be very clear. We need to create millions and millions of decent paying jobs. How do you do that? Well, among other things, you rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. We have introduced legislation that calls for, along with Senator Barbara Mikulski, that invests $1 trillion in our infrastructure over a 5-year period. Tom, that creates 13 million decent paying jobs. How's that for a start?
Yeah, that's a great start. Exactly what we need.